Okay, so get ready for a story that sounds like it's straight out of some Hollywood spy movie, right?
Oh, I know what you mean.
We're talking World War II and
High stakes, right.
high stakes.
Yeah.
The fate of Europe hanging in the balance.
Yeah.
But, forget your usual tanks and troops.
Mm-hmm.
The Allies had this, like, secret weapon,
A secret weapon,
a
okay.
unit so stealthy,
Yeah.
so good at what they did.
Yeah.
They were called, wait for it, the Ghost Army.
Ooh, I like that.
Catchy, right?
Very catchy.
So what we have here is a mountain of research, basically.
Okay.
Declassified documents, firsthand accounts, and even, get this,
Yeah.
some of the original designs they used,
Wow, really?
all pointing to this incredible story.
And it's funny because what's really amazing is how the Ghost Army came about, right?
Yeah.
From like a very specific need at the time.
Okay.
So picture this. It's 1944. The Allies, they're planning this massive counteroffensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're up against a really, really tough German army.
Makes sense. They needed an edge.
They needed something big.
Yeah, something unexpected.
Exactly. And that's where deception comes in.
Okay.
It was crucial to their strategy. If you think back to like World War I, you've got your fake trenches, camouflage.
Yeah, classic tactics.
Right. It's always been a part of war, tricking the enemy.
But I'm guessing with World War II, there were new toys to play with.
Oh, absolutely. World War II, you've got new technology, and that means new ways to fool the enemy.
Okay, so this is where our Ghost Army steps onto the stage.
Enter the Ghost Army.
Yeah. So it's 1944. They form this super secret unit,
Uh-huh.
the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops,
Okay.
and their mission. Simple, mislead, confuse,
Right.
and delay the enemy, throw a wrench in the works.
Basically, yeah.
So, hold on, they had like a whole unit dedicated to staging these elaborate illusions.
A whole unit. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Oh, it is. And it wasn't just your average soldiers either. They had artists, architects, sound engineers, you name it.
Well, a real mix of talent there.
A real creative bunch, all working together to create these massive multi-sensory deceptions. I mean, we're talking big stuff here.
Okay, so we've got the who, we've got the why.
Right.
But how did they actually pull this off? What were their tricks? Spill the beans?
Well, all right, let's start with the visuals.
Okay.
Imagine you're a German scout flying over enemy territory.
Mm-hmm.
You look down, and bam, there's a whole battalion of tanks ready to roll.
Okay.
Except they're not real. They're inflatable.
Inflatable tanks. Seriously.
I'm telling you, seriously. And it wasn't just tanks. They had inflatable artillery, jeeps, even entire encampments, all fake.
And they did all that to fool German reconnaissance.
Oh, absolutely. It was all about playing with perspective from the air, making things look way more threatening than they actually were.
I mean, that's brilliant. It's like a stage production, but on a massive scale.
It was. They had to be meticulous, making sure everything looked real from above, using camouflage netting, strategically placing dummy vehicles, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, like one giant set piece.
Right.
But I'm guessing it wasn't just about what the enemy saw. Sound had to play a role.
Oh, you bet. Remember those sound engineers we talked about? Well, they were busy, busy people.
Doing what?
Recording the sounds of real tanks, trucks, troop movements, all that good stuff.
Creating this, like, soundtrack of war?
Exactly. And then they'd blast these sounds from these giant, massive speakers mounted on vehicles.
Whoa, hold on. So they had these speakers just rolling around, blasting battlefield noises.
Oh, yeah. And these weren't your average speakers either. We're talking powerful enough to project sound for miles.
So they were creating this audio-visual spectacle of war.
A total sensory experience. But, and this is key, the timing, the placement of the sounds, it all had to be perfect.
Yeah, you can't just have, like, tank noises coming from an empty field, right? It had to match the visual.
Exactly. It had to be a coordinated performance, like a well-rehearsed orchestra.
So we've got inflatable tanks, we've got sound effects, but I have a feeling they had more tricks up their sleeve.
Oh, there's always more. Now think about radio in World War II.
Vital for communication.
Crucial. So the Ghost Army, they mastered radio deception as well.
Hold on, so they were creating fake radio chatter.
That's right. They created these whole fake radio networks, made up code names, frequencies, the works. They even had guys who could mimic the voices of real commanders.
Wait, they had people who could impersonate commanders on the radio? That's incredible. Imagine the pressure on those guys to be so convincing.
It was high-stakes acting, that's for sure. One wrong word, one slip-up, and the whole illusion could fall apart.
So we've got the inflatables, the sound effects, and this whole symphony of fake radio chatter going on.
A true multimedia experience.
They're pulling out all the stops.
And they had to. Remember, the stakes were incredibly high. Their success could literally determine the outcome of battles, even the entire war.
It blows my mind the creativity, the ingenuity involved in all of this.
It was a unique blend of artistry and military strategy, that's for sure. And the best part, it worked.
It wasn't just about clever tricks.
Right.
They actually had a real impact.
The real impact, yeah.
Okay, so they've got the tools, they've got the skills.
Yeah.
But let's talk about how they put them to use. Like, what were some of their greatest hits?
All right. Well, one of their most famous missions has got to be Operation Fortitude. This was 1944, right before D-Day.
Okay, D-Day, the biggest amphibious invasion in history.
Exactly. And the Allies, they needed to keep the Germans guessing, keep them off balance.
Insurrection was everything.
Absolutely crucial. The Germans, they were pretty sure the invasion was going to hit at Pas-de-Calais, you know, the most logical spot.
Right, but the real target was Normandy.
Bingo! So the Ghost Army, their job was to create this phantom army, make the Germans believe a massive force was about to attack Pas-de-Calais. And get this, they even brought in General Patton.
No way. General Patton, the legend himself.
The one and only. They created this fake first U.S. Army group, supposedly led by Patton.
Okay.
Fake tanks, dummy landing craft, and of course all that convincing radio chatter we talked about.
Using his reputation to make the deception even stronger.
Exactly.
That's genius. So did it work?
Oh, it worked like a charm. The Germans bought it hook, line, and sinker. Diverted troops and resources to Pas-de-Calais, leaving Normandy wide open.
So thanks to the Ghost Army, the real invasion at Normandy faced less resistance.
Right, helping to ensure the success of D-Day.
It's amazing how they turned creativity, illusion, into a real weapon.
They sure did. And you know, Operation Fortitude, that was just the beginning. They kept using their skills throughout the war, contributing to victory after victory.
Wow, so what else did they pull off? I'm dying to know more.
Well, another fascinating one, and we touched on this earlier, was Operation Brest.
Oh yeah, this was after D-Day.
Yep, 1944. The Allies were trying to secure the port city of Brest in France.
And the German garrison there was putting up a fight.
A fierce fight. So they call them the Ghost Army, right?
Makes sense.
And their mission, to create the illusion of a massive siege.
Okay, so we're talking full arsenal here, right? Inflatable artillery, sound trucks blasting away, radio operators creating this sense of like a huge attacking force.
You got it. They wanted the Germans to think they were completely surrounded, facing overwhelming odds.
And did they succeed?
Oh, they did. The Germans, thinking they were outnumbered and outgunned, delayed sending reinforcements, giving the real Allied forces the time they needed.
To capture Brest.
Exactly.
Another win for illusion over brute force. I can't get over how much impact they had.
It's pretty amazing. And then there was Operation Viersen in 1945.
This was later in the war, right?
Yep, the final push into Germany. And the Allies, they needed to cross the Rhine River.
A major obstacle.
A huge one. So the Ghost Army steps in, and this time they orchestrate this, like, symphony of deception.
Okay, tell me everything.
We're talking sound trucks, inflatable convoys, fake radio chatter, the whole shebang, all designed to draw the Germans' attention away from the real crossing point.
So they basically created this massive distraction.
A decoy, yeah. And it worked like a charm. The Ninth Army crossed the Rhine with minimal losses, a huge victory for the Allies.
It's almost like they were haunting the enemy with these phantom armies.
Living up to their name, the Ghost Army.
They really did. And it's remarkable that they accomplished all of this without firing a single shot.
Their weapons were creativity, ingenuity, and a deep understanding of, you know, human psychology.
It really is a testament to the power of thinking outside the box.
It is. But, you know, let's shift gears a little.
Okay.
We've talked about the what and the how.
Yeah.
But who were these guys? Who were the people behind these incredible illusions?
That's a great question. We've mentioned artists and engineers.
Yeah.
But who were some of the key players? Who made the Ghost Army tick?
Well, you got to start with Colonel Harry Reeder, the unit's commander.
Okay, so he's the one who brought this whole crazy idea together.
He was a visionary leader, understood the power of deception in modern warfare, and he created an environment where creativity could thrive.
Which isn't always easy in a military setting. I bet there were some clashes between the artists and the soldiers.
Oh, I'm sure there were. But Reader, he managed to bring everyone together, make sure everyone understood the importance of their role.
And we touched on this earlier, but they really did recruit some amazing talent.
They did. I mean, Bill Blass, the fashion designer,
Yeah.
he was painting and designing props for the Ghost Army.
Talk about a hidden talent.
Yeah,
And Ellsworth Kelly, the abstract artist.
another one. He was designing camouflage patterns for them.
It's mind-blowing to think about these future art icons using their skills to help win a war.
It really is. It shows you the unique blend of talent and creativity that made the Ghost Army so special. A true testament to human ingenuity.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The origins, the tactics, the key players.
We have.
But now I want to dig a little deeper, What was it like to actually be a soldier in this top secret unit?
Good question.
Like, imagine you're a young artist.
Yeah.
Suddenly you're thrown into this world of secrecy and deception.
Ripped from your normal life and surrounded by these fake tanks, crazy sound effects.
It must have felt like stepping into some surreal alternate reality.
It did. They had to live these double lives, keep their missions secret from everyone, even their families.
That must have been incredibly tough, especially given the pressure they were under.
Oh, it took a toll on many of them, for sure. But it also created this incredible bond between them.
It was like they were in this exclusive club, bound together by this crazy secret.
Exactly. They relied on each other for support, for humor, for a sense of normalcy in this very abnormal situation.
I bet there were moments of intense pressure, but also moments of laughter and camaraderie.
Absolutely. There are stories of them inflating a tank under enemy fire, cracking jokes to keep their spirits up. I mean, you gotta have a sense of humor to do what they did.
That's incredible. So they're facing real danger, but they're also finding ways to cope, to stay human in the midst of all this chaos.
They were. And it's important to remember that the Ghost Army wasn't all fun and games. They faced real risks, and sadly, some of them paid the ultimate price.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of the illusions, but we can't forget the sacrifices they made.
Absolutely. They were true heroes.
They were artists, they were soldiers, they were pranksters, and they were heroes, all rolled into one.
A truly unique unit. And their story makes you wonder, how did they manage to pull it off time and time again? What made them so effective?
Well, I'm guessing part of it was that the Germans relied so heavily on reconnaissance, on gathering intel from the air and from the ground.
That's right. They were constantly looking for the enemy, trying to figure out their next move.
So they were vulnerable to being tricked, to being misled by what they thought they were seeing and hearing.
Exactly. The Ghost Army exploited that weakness brilliantly.
And it wasn't just about fooling the Germans. It was about making them react in a certain way,
Right.
Like draw them away from the real target, give the Allies a tactical advantage.
Right. It was psychological warfare at its finest.
Wow, so they were manipulating the enemy's perception, influencing their decisions.
Precisely. And it worked time and time again. The Ghost Army's illusions led to Allied victories and saved countless lives.
It's an incredible story of creativity, courage, and the power of human ingenuity.
It truly is. And it makes you think about what other unsung heroes and stories are out there just waiting to be discovered.
Absolutely. History is full of surprises, and I bet there are tons of stories like the Ghost Army's just waiting to be told.
I bet you're right. And, the Ghost Army's story, it's not just fascinating, it's relevant to us today.
Oh, I agree. In a world where we're constantly bombarded with information, where it's hard to know what's real and what's fake, their story reminds us of how vulnerable we are to deception.
That's a good point. They were masters of manipulating perceptions. And it makes you think about how those tactics are still used today in advertising, politics, everywhere.
It's a reminder to be critical thinkers, to question what we see and hear, to not take everything at face value.
Exactly. And another important takeaway from the Ghost Army,
What's that?
it's a reminder of the power of creativity and innovation, even in the face of, seemingly insurmountable challenges.
They turned inflatable tanks into weapons of war. It's incredible.
It is. It shows us that sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places.
So there were soldiers, artists, innovators, and in a way there were philosophers too, right? Making us think about truth, deception, the complexities of war.
They definitely made us think, and their legacy continues to spark debate and discussion, which is amazing.
It's a story that deserves to be told, not just for its historical value, but for the lessons it offers about human ingenuity, resilience, and the ethical challenges we face in the world today.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, I think we've reached a good stopping point for part one of our deep dive into the Ghost Army.
A good place to pause, I think.
We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still so much more to explore.
Oh yeah, tons more.
So we'll be back soon with part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into their operations, their impact on the war, and of course, the ethical questions surrounding their tactics.
Looking forward to it. Until then, keep those brains buzzing and keep the spirit of the Ghost Army alive.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See, it's wild, right? Like they took art and war and somehow mashed them together.
I know, it's like, what even is a battlefield when you're fighting with illusions?
Yeah, exactly. So last time we were talking about what it was like for these Ghost Army guys living in this world of like constant secrecy.
Yeah, it must have been a trip.
A total mind bend. Think about it. Many of these guys were artists, right? Designers. They're used to expressing themselves.
Freely?
Yeah. And then, bam, they're in the strict military world, can't tell anyone what they're doing.
Top secret.
Exactly. And the missions, as creative as they were super intense.
High pressure.
You know, your illusions could literally decide if a battle is won or lost. Heavy stuff.
Yeah, it's a different kind of pressure, right? You're not facing the enemy head on, but the stakes are just as high.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, the constant deception, it had to mess with you.
Living a lie, kinda.
In a way, yeah. You're surrounded by fake tanks, fake sounds. It's got to be disorienting.
Did any of them ever talk about, like, the psychological impact?
Some did, yeah. There are stories of guys feeling isolated, you know, struggling with the secrecy.
Makes sense.
But there was also this amazing camaraderie. Like, they were all in on this crazy thing together.
Sharing this wild secret.
And their creativity. I mean, come on, you're inflating a tank while under enemy fire? There's got to be some dark humor there.
Yeah, finding ways to laugh, to connect, even when things are intense.
That's resilience, man. It says a lot about them.
I think so, too. So they're carrying this secret, they're dealing with all this pressure, but they're also pulling off these amazing victories.
Right. It's like this weird paradox. They're making these fake armies, but the impact is totally real.
Okay, so let's talk more about that impact.
Sure.
We talked about Operation Fortitude, D-Day, but I'm curious about their other missions.
Yeah, okay.
What kind of challenges did they face and how did they adapt?
Well, each mission was different, right? They had to be flexible.
Makes sense.
One day they're mimicking a small unit, the next they're faking an entire armored division. They were like chameleons, constantly changing.
That takes some serious skill.
Oh yeah, they had to think on their feet. And they dealt with all sorts of stuff. Bad weather, tricky terrain, you name it.
I bet. It's like this high-stakes game of cat and mouse.
Exactly. One example that shows how adaptable they were is Operation Breast. Remember that one?
Yeah, we talked about the fake artillery, the sound tricks.
Right. But there was more to it.
I figured.
See, the terrain around Brest, it wasn't easy. Lots of hills and forests.
So they couldn't just plop down their inflatable tanks in a field.
Nope. They had to get creative. They hid the tanks in clearings, used the trees to camouflage them.
So they were blending their illusions into the environment, making them even more realistic.
Exactly. And the weather played a role, too.
How so?
Well, if it was foggy, they could be more bold with the visuals the Germans couldn't see as well from the air.
But on a clear day, they had to be more careful.
Right. They'd use more sound tricks, create the illusion of movement without actually showing anything.
So they were always adapting, thinking on their feet.
Always. Part meteorologist, part artist, part soldier.
Multi-talented bunch.
They had to be. And they were always trying new things, you know, innovating.
What, do we know about any of those innovations?
Oh, yeah. For example, they developed these special paints for the inflatable tanks.
To make them look real.
Exactly. They experimented with textures, sheens, even paints that reflected heat to fool enemy radar.
Whoa, they were thinking ahead.
Always. They even made the inflatables look like they'd been in battle, you know, bullet holes, scorch marks.
Attention to detail.
It's the little things that sell it.
I'm curious, what did the Germans think of all this? Did they ever catch on?
There's evidence they knew about the Ghost Army, but they kind of underestimated them.
They thought it was too crazy to work.
It was so out there, so unconventional. I think that's part of why it works so well.
So the Germans' own assumptions about war were used against them.
Exactly, and it worked. Over and over. Ghost Army illusions, Allied victories, lives saved.
It's a wild story, right? Creativity, courage, you know, the best of humanity, even in the middle of war.
The best and the worst, I guess. And it makes you wonder, what other crazy stories are out there, hidden in history?
Right. Like, what else don't we know about?
Exactly. And you know, the Ghost Army's story, it's not just a history lesson, it's relevant today.
Oh, I agree. In a world where we're drowning in information, it's a reminder to be skeptical.
So much fake news, right? So much spin.
It's like They were the masters of perception.
Yeah.
And it shows how easily we could be fooled.
That's it. And think about how those tactics are still used. Advertising, politics, the whole game.
It's everywhere. We got to be critical thinkers, question everything.
Exactly. But the Ghost Army also reminds us of the power of creativity, of thinking differently.
Yeah, they were masters of that.
They took a crazy idea and made it work, even when the stakes were incredibly high.
It's inspiring in a way, to think outside the box like that.
Totally. It shows that sometimes the best solutions are the ones nobody expects.
So they were soldiers, artists, innovators, and maybe even philosophers in a way, making us think about truth and deception.
Yeah, deep stuff. And it's amazing that their story still sparks debate. People are still talking about them.
It's a story worth telling, definitely. For the history, the lessons about creativity, and the ethical questions it raises.
Couldn't agree more. And, in the end, the Ghost Army, it's about more than just war.
What do you mean?
It's about the human spirit, the ability to find humor, to connect, even in the darkest of times.
And that's something worth holding on to, I think.
Definitely.
Well, I think we've covered a lot in this part of our deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
We talked about how they adapted, their innovations, all the challenges.
It's been a good chat.
But in the next part, I want to get into something that's been on my mind.
Okay, what's that?
The ethics of it all. They were effective, no doubt, but they were also deceiving people.
Yeah, that's a big one. Worth exploring.
Definitely. So join us for part 3, where we'll dive into the ethical questions surrounding the Ghost Army and see how their legacy shapes the world today. Man, the Ghost Army, what a story, right? Inflatable tanks, sound effects, it's like they reinvented warfare.
They really did. And, all that deception, it raises some interesting questions.
Yeah, the ethics of it all.
Exactly.
On one hand, they're illusions. They save lives, Allied and German.
Right, if they can make the enemy back off, less fighting, less dying.
Exactly. But then again, it was all built on, lies.
Tricking the enemy, for sure.
It's tricky, right?
Yeah.
Where's the line between, clever tactics and straight up lying?
Yeah, it's a gray area, no doubt. People have been debating this for ages.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, war is already brutal and deceptive, right?
That's the nature of it, unfortunately.
But, throughout history, armies have used tricks, camouflage, decoys.
Misinformation.
Yeah.
It's all been part of the game.
So the Ghost Army, they just took it to a whole other level.
They were masters of illusion, that's for sure, using technology to make these elaborate tricks.
And you could argue, World War II, fighting the Nazis, maybe the ends justified the means.
Some people say that, yeah. But it's still worth thinking about what happens when you use those tactics in other conflicts.
Yeah, that's true. It's a slippery slope, And it makes you wonder how their legacy impacts things today.
Oh, it definitely has an impact. We see it in psychological operations, cyber warfare, all that.
It's like disinformation campaigns, fake news.
Exactly. It's all about shaping the narrative, controlling how people see things.
So the battlefield's changed, right? It's not just about physical space anymore.
It's in our heads now, too.
And that makes the ethical questions even tougher, right? In the digital age, it's so easy to spread lies.
Way too easy. So the Ghost Army, it's not just a fun history story, it's a reminder.
To be careful, to think for ourselves.
Exactly. Don't just believe everything you see.
But, there's also a positive side, right? The Ghost Army, they were so innovative.
Oh yeah, they thought outside the box, for sure.
And that's something we need today, right? In a world that's constantly changing.
We need to be adaptable, creative, like them.
Find new solutions, think differently.
That's the key. Sometimes the best ideas are the ones that seem crazy at first.
So they were soldiers, artists, innovators, and maybe even philosophers,
Making us think about truth, about deception, about the whole mess of war.
They really made us think, and their story, it's still sparking conversations.
Which is amazing. It shows how powerful it is.
It's a story that we need to keep telling, not just for the history, but for what it teaches us about, being human, even in tough times.
Couldn't agree more.
So here we are, at the end of our deep dive into the Ghost Army.
Quite a journey, huh?
It really has been. And I hope everyone listening learned something new, maybe got inspired.
Me too. Me
To
too.
think differently, to question things.
To be a little more like the Ghost Army, maybe?
Yeah, in the best way possible.
Exactly. And, if anyone wants to learn more, there are books, documentaries, museums, all sorts of stuff out there.
So yeah, keep exploring, keep learning, never stop being curious.
That's the spirit. And never forget the Ghost Army.
Never forget them. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thanks for having me.